So this video is going to be on how to replace your mute foam and just sort of how I glue them here. So this is an old prototype of ours. This is one of the first of our final version, but anyways, this is not fit to sell. So I'm just going to show you by starting to remove the foam on this one. And it's not easy, but it's doable. And basically you start peeling the foam up. And the good thing about this glue is so you can see over here I'm just peeling the foam. Here I've been able to get under the glue. So if you can get under the glue, you can really start to peel it off, because while the glue is very strong, one of the properties that is very good for making mutes is that you can always peel it off. So, you just keep going like this, and let's see. So yeah, anyways, you can peel it off, you get the point. It will come off. It's not gonna be easy, but it will come off. And if you have any residue on it, like you can see here, you can just kind of use your nail or your finger and just kind of rub it off. It should come out. And you want your surface to be completely clean before you're re-gluing it, so you want the best bond. Okay, so once you've peeled off all your foam, I'm just going to use a black one here, you're going to start the process of gluing. So some of them, they might have little lines in them from the roll, from the factory, but you can usually just flip them over and it should be fine. And this is the side that's going to get glue, so you'll never see this side. So what I like to do is sort of a zigzag pattern of dots of glue. I have these paper towels up here are from previous gluing, and I like to keep them here because I like to wipe the glue off on them. And that's important because if you get any glue on the other side of this foam, it's going to look very bad. So then I'll take with my glue spreader, I'll take one very light pass, just sort of roughly spreading the glue out. Again, I want to make sure I don't get any off the edges. So I'm going to make sure to stay inside the foam, get all the way to all the edges. Now that it's shifted, whenever it's shifted, in case there's any glue on the paper towel, I like to move it just so that I can be extra careful that I'm not getting glue on the outside. So this should get your end glued pretty well. I'm left-handed, so if you're right-handed, you might reverse the direction that you're spreading it or reverse how you put it on. This is just what's most comfortable for me. So here we go. Going to move it again. Okay. So now that I've finished spreading glue pretty evenly across this entire thing, I'm just going to lift it up and check that there's no glue on the surface. Okay, so we're good. This is the side that you can touch because ultimately this is going to be cut off. You'll see that. So next I take my mute body, the glue out again, and I start where the print seam is. And I'll just sort of make a line down the middle of the taper. Okay. Then what I do is I take my spreader. Again, I'm never using this edge. You can if you want to, but I just prefer to use the flat edge. So then I'm going to spread it out on the whole taper. I'm going to keep going just a little bit, spreading on the taper. And then what you can do is you can take it like this, and you should just be able to drag it. You might have times like you can see maybe here the glue isn't on this bottom edge, and you just spread it and you keep going, and it should be able to keep making a nice layer of glue. And once you first start, it's a little bit inconsistent, but so you get it going. Just needs to be a thin layer. It doesn't need to be thick. In fact, you really don't want a thick layer of glue at all, because what that's going to do is that's going to cause bubbles between your foam and the body of your mute. Bubbles won't be air, they will be glue. Okay, so I've gotten all around my mute. Now I leave this, and I keep some glue on here because I don't want to wipe it off yet. And I take this, I take the side that I said I was going to touch, and I line it up on the seam first. A little bit over the seam is where I put my edge. I make sure that putting a little bit of tension pulling it, make sure that I'm lining it up with the edge as I go all the way around. That's just going to help make sure there's no bubbles, and you want your foam, if anything, you want it to be behind that plastic edge, because if it's hanging over, then that runs more of a risk of it getting damaged when you're putting it in your bell. So if anything, just err on the side of it being behind the edge. And then you can see we've gotten to this point. So now that it's all stuck down and they're overlapping, you take your razor blade in line with the seam and you press. You don't swipe, you press. And it has to be, if it's not a razor blade, it must be a very sharp knife. And you press all the way through both layers of foam. Once you're sure you've done that, and that's what gives you this clean line here. Once you've done that, you take this, peel it up, take the old piece out from under it. And now this is where the spreader comes in. Take the spreader, which still has glue on the bottom of it. And I just kind of wipe it under here. And I make sure I get all the way to the corners. All the way to all the edges. And then I just press it down. Now, depending on how much tension there is, your mute foam might want to pull back to about here. And in that case, what you do is you push it all the way to the edge, you stretch it a little bit just with your thumb. Make sure there's no glue on your thumb. You can see I accidentally got a little bit of glue on my thumb. This residue will just rub out, but Just be careful. And so you push it with your thumb closed, and you can set it on the flare while it's drying. And then it's going to open up slowly over time. You just give it a little bit of time to dry. And once it starts to get stiffer, you can press it, and you do that in maybe 3 rounds. It'll get hard enough in about 5 to 10 minutes. It'll get hard enough to where it should stay closed with the seam. And even if it's not perfectly closed, that's okay. The foam actually gets squished once you put it in your bell the first couple times. So yeah, and you're gonna go around your edge and like make sure you're getting contact in all the places. Make sure seam is well closed. Make sure everything is right. And then you can just leave it to dry like this. And you're gonna wanna let it cure for 24 hours before it's fully hard. That way, when you put it in your bell, it doesn't open up here or come off at all. But you're good by this point.